Okay, so you've seen some of the some of the hardware terms that we're going to use in this computer. Definitely, you want to read the book. I didn't explain every single thing of how the CPU works. Those are all definitely things that we look at next year in Computer Science 355. So if you're curious, definitely read the book. But I want to move on now and look at some software terms. So what exactly is software? Software is just computer programs. So a program is a set of instructions that directs the activities of a computer system. And we saw roughly how this works in hardware. The hardware takes one byte or one instruction, executes it, tells the ALU to do something. The ALU says it's done. Computer or the CPU moves on to the next instruction. It just executes one instruction after another. You don't need to know a whole lot of details about this, except you might want to look at some of the terms. From software, we have a bunch of terms too. We have two main categories, that's system software and application software. So system software is stuff that the operating system uses, plus things like programming language compilers like the Java compiler or the C compiler, which we will be using, and other communication programs and command line commands, things like that. Application software would be things like word processing, spreadsheets, web browsers, all those things. And we will be using some of these too. So one thing you want to get familiar, the main thing that you want to get familiar with really is this idea of layers. At the very bottom towards the computer hardware is things like system software. So the operating system, which coordinates hardware, things like that, so that you don't have to worry about how hardware works. That's all taken care of in the operating system and system software. On top of this operating system software is application software like web browsers, things like that. The web browser or word processor, those kinds of programs don't need to know all the details of the hardware. Those things are sort of hidden from application software by the system software. So definitely we will see this kind of structure over and over again. Lowest level would be the hardware. On top of that will be a layer of software called operating system software or system software in general. In this first chapter, they just lump it all together. And then on top of that is application software, and you, the user, interact mainly with application software. Although in this course, what we will do is we'll try to get to more of the system software. If you're using Windows, if you're using Microsoft Word browser, all you're really doing is going at this level. You're just using application software. You almost never go down to the system software level. Well, in this course, this is what we want to do mainly, is live over here. Where you, the user, will be using system software more and more. And we get into more and more of the lower level details as we go along in this course. Okay, so when it comes to software, who is the boss? It's the operating system that's the boss, and it's the most important system software component of a computer. It's a collection of programs, and the operating system sounds like one big thing, but it's not. It's usually just a collection of hundreds of programs. All of the operating systems that we will look at, we will really only be looking at one particular system, one particular kind of Unix operating system called Linux. But if you look at Microsoft Windows, if you look at Mac OS X, all those things work pretty much the same way. They're all pretty much written using C, the C programming language, and they're a collection of C programs, really. Okay, so the operating system plays different roles as service provider, hardware manager, and facilitator of the user interface. What are the main functions of an operating system? It's mainly there to provide an interface for users and application programs so that they can access low-level hardware functions. Also, they allocate hardware resources to users and their application programs. So if you had many users using a single system, on some machines, You're each given free reign over how much memory you want, stuff like that, disk space. But oftentimes, the operating system will say, okay, you have a certain quota of disk space that you can use, and once you reach that quota, that's it. You cannot use any more disk space. So the operating system is what does all of that hardware resource allocation. Okay. So it turns out this operating system, which we consider just one thing, has many layers. At the lowest level, or the lowest layer that's closest to the hardware, is the kernel layer. And we are actually going to be using operating systems that use the Linux kernel. On top of that kernel layer is various other layers, service layers, that control different parts of the hardware and the operating system. So these can also include files and command layer. So let's take a look at this rough structure. In this course, we will be getting to basically the command layer, which you might not have used so far. Even Windows and Mac OS X have these things. So in Windows, if you execute the command command.exe, I believe, or cmd.exe, that gives you a shell in which you can type commands. And we will be doing that, but not with Windows, but with Linux instead. And so this command layer executes a different layer of software, which eventually executes things in the kernel. And we will be using the Linux kernel. And the Linux kernel is what sits right on top of the hardware. So I'm guessing that some of you will have used these things in the past, but maybe for a lot of you this will be the first time that you execute commands. Some of you might have used the terminal in Mac OS X or the command shell in Windows. That's basically what we're going to be talking about for the next couple of weeks. Okay, so I hope you get a rough idea of what some of these terms are, and we'll pick up with commands next.